Fair use.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. The 3 laws, yeah. Perfect circle of protection.
A robot cannot harm a human being. The first law of robotics.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your commercials. But doesn't the second law state that a robot has to obey any order given by a human being?
Fair use.
What if it was given in order to kill?
Impossible. It would conflict with the first law.
Right, but the third law states that a robot can defend itself.
Yes, but only when that action does not conflict with the first or second laws.
You know what they say? Laws are made to be broken.
No, not these laws. They're hardwired into every robot. A robot can no more commit murder than a human could.
Fair use.
The temple has been targeting our children for a while now. But in recent years, they began taking them away for training. Aria is the property of the temple. To her, I do not exist. There is only the authority. And the girl I knew, she's gone.
Fair use. Fair use.
But you're still my child. I understand what you offer, but I have my own battles here to fight. And an obligation to save as many sons and daughters as I can.
May I? Please.
Fair use.
I've seen this before. A demon has been severed.
She is not demonic.
I did not say she was. Forgive me. Please, if you'll allow me to explain. Still, Maria? Still, Maria and I are one. She is my demon, my soul, if you use that word. Aria's demon resided within. The link that binds us to our demon is immensely powerful. But when it is severed, well, very little remains.
Fair use. Fair use.
They are taking our souls, Ugunway, and with them our humanity, to make us easier to control, to make us this.
Fair use. Fair use.
Inside them you die. It's impossible. My name is Jared Howe. I haven't spoken to another human being in 2 years.
Melanie, Strider. This is the beginning of a love story.
Fair use. Fair use.
And that might not seem like a big deal except for one thing. This is the future, and humanity is all but extinct. We have been invaded by another species, who erase our minds to take our bodies. But there are a few of us left who still fight back. I'll lead them away.
Ellie, no!
Come with us. Like hell!
Fair use. Fair use. Fair use.
Barely a bone not broken, or organ ruptured.
This one wants to live. Human bodies take a lot of getting used to. They're not like the others we have inhabited. Their emotions are powerful. If her will has survived along with her memories, she may resist from within.
Fair use. The sealed portion. The true reason behind the fall of Adam and Eve is revealed. The situation of the world at the time of their expulsion is explained. Adam and his posterity begin to spread throughout the world. And now I, Moroni, continue with my abridgment of the vision of the brother of Jared. And it came to pass that the brother of Jared observed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he watched to see in what manner came the cause of their fall from this state. And this fall hath been represented in many different ways in the Holy Scriptures, according to the traditions and interpretations of men. For the Lord hath not revealed the full effect of their fall, and the way in which it came about unto the children of men. And he commanded Adam and Eve to teach their children a different version of what actually transpired in the Garden of Eden, even how Eve fell before Adam. And the Lord instructed them, saying, Nevertheless, ye shall not divulge any portion of the truth regarding the way in which Eve was tempted, and lost her power over death, and was cast out of the Garden of Eden. For behold, these things shall not be known by any man, except it be unto those whom I choose to reveal them. And I, Moroni, would that ye should know that unto some the truth of these things was revealed, and this truth have been corrupted and changed over the course of the history of the children of men. For some have written concerning a fallen angel who came down upon the earth and enticed the daughters of men to engage in sexual intercourse. And others have misinterpreted the words that are found in the book that proceeded out of the mouth of the Jew, in which they say, The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And many thought these sons of God. And many thought these sons of God meant the angels of God. And in this they do err considerably. For behold, there are no angels or servants of God who have the body necessary to produce offspring with a daughter of a mortal man. And those who have interpreted these things in this way do not understand the workings of the Father. Nevertheless, many things that are written in the books of the children of men have portions of the truth hidden amongst the stories and the myths that have been passed down from generation to generation. But in the beginning, Adam taught his children the truth that the Lord had revealed unto him, and commanded his posterity to teach their children the truth in all things, except for those things forbidden of them by the Lord. And Adam caused to be written many of his teachings, that they might be passed down from one generation to the next, thus preserving the plain and simple truths from the mouth of God that Adam received while in the Garden of Eden. But as I have previously explained it unto you, many of the things have been lost in translation and corrupted by the works of men. And the language in which Adam wrote these things unto his children have been lost from among all the languages of the world. And it was in this tongue that Adam learned from the Father. And it is in this tongue, even the Adamic tongue, that the Father speaketh unto those who hear his voice. And now I, Moroni, refer to the words of the brother of Jared, which he wrote concerning Adam and Eve. And I saw the lands that surrounded the great land wherein was placed in the Garden of Eden. And these lands were great, and there were a great many waters that separated these lands from each other. But in the beginning of the creation, this was not so. For the land was one of itself, this being the purpose of the Father, in allowing the plants to grow and populate themselves, one with another, that there might be air to breathe, and an atmosphere created upon the planet, that he had formed into a world for his children. And the flowers and the plants that he caused to grow upon the earth and cover it with their abundance could not do so, except that the land was one of itself. And I saw many animals that appeared very similar to the bodies that the Father had created for Adam and Eve. And these animals were like unto Adam and Eve. Nevertheless, they lived by their instincts without the spirit that God had created for the order of species of the bodies that he had created for Adam and Eve. And these animals were like unto Adam and Eve. Nevertheless, they lived by their instincts without the spirit that God had created for the order of species of the bodies that he had created for Adam and Eve. And these animals that were similar to them were separated by the many waters. And there were none of these upon the land in which the Lord had planted and cared for the garden in the land of Eden. And I looked and beheld the organization of the communities of these animals. And they did not have a spoken language among them. And they did not know right from wrong, but lived according to their natural desires that perpetuated their lives. And I also saw Lucifer with the many spirits that were following him. And they were wandering to and fro upon the earth, wondering how they could institute the plans that they had created for their own form of government and for their own happiness. And these spirits had the power given unto them, like unto all spirits, to inhabit temporarily the mortal body of any animal that they desire. Nevertheless, according to the restrictions placed upon them by the eternal laws of heaven, they could not use these animals in any ways to hurt the children of men, thus interfering with the free agency of the children of God. But because there were no children of men created from the bodies of Adam and Eve, Lucifer could find no animals whereupon entering their mortal body he could experience joy. But because there were no children of men created from the bodies of Adam and Eve, Lucifer could find no animals whereupon entering their mortal body he could experience joy. For upon entering the body of an animal that was not prepared to house the spirit of a child of God inside of it, the animal was confused and thrashed its body considerably in an attempt to rid itself of this unnatural imbalance. And thus Lucifer and those that followed after him found little success among the animals that were created by God to serve the measure of their creation, and then become extinct for the rest of the probationary days of his children. And after many years of going to and fro upon the earth, Lucifer and his followers began to have some considerable success with some species of animals that possessed bodies like unto the bodies that God had created for Adam and Eve. And with the limited power that Lucifer was permitted by the laws of heaven to have over them, he began to interbreed certain species with other species, until he had formed an animal that was very much like unto the bodies that were created for Adam and Eve. And after much time had passed, in the refining this breeding process, the followers of Lucifer began to possess the bodies of these animals and cause them to act according to their own desires, which desires gave them limited amount of happiness. Nevertheless, these animals were not given the exact same bodies that were created for Adam and Eve, and therefore Lucifer and his followers could not experience a fullness of the joy that had been described to them by the Father in the beginning. For these animals did not have a kingdom of glory prepared for them in the kingdom of the Father. and they were of a much lower order of element, because their creation and their purpose was to bring about the earth and prepare it for the probationary days of the children of God. And Lucifer became incarnate and took upon himself one of the bodies that he found best suitable for that which he was wont to do. And the desire of Satan was to go into the Garden of Eden and entice Eve and cause her to obey the eternal laws of the Father, that he might take the glory upon himself. And the desire of Satan was to go into the Garden of Eden and entice Eve and cause her to obey the eternal laws of the Father, that he might take the glory upon himself. And Satan designed a type of ship in which he traveled over the many waters. And when he reached the land in which was centered the Garden of Eden, he continued his travels up a large river of water until he came upon the borders of the Garden of Eden. And the Lord did not stop Satan from doing that which he was wont to do, and this because of the law of free agency. And Satan spent many days in the body of this creature, and the creature appeared very much like unto a man. And for many days he secretly watched the goings and comings of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And when there came a time that Eve was alone, washing herself on the borders of the garden, Satan came forth out of his hiding place and introduced himself unto Eve. And Satan caused the creature to speak unto Eve in the voice of a man, in the language of the Father, a language that had been spoken in the kingdom of the Father, in which all spirits were created. And Satan spake unto her, and Eve was not afraid, for Eve knew not what to be afraid of, she being innocent in the Garden of Eden. And Satan touched Eve in a manner that Eve had never been touched before. And when he touched Eve, she was surprised and astonished at the feeling that it caused to come over her. And Satan said unto her, Knowest thou not that these feelings that thou art experiencing at this time are those blessings that the Father hath given unto thee, that thou mightest partake of the joy of which he partaketh? And Eve answered him, saying, I do not know about the feeling of joy of which our Father hath spoken, for I have not yet experienced this joy in all things. But in the things that I have experienced, I do not know what joy I should feel. And Satan said unto her, When I touch thee in this way, doth it not give unto thee the feelings of joy? And these feelings are the only way that thou canst comply with all the commands of the Father. For did not the Father command thee in Adam to multiply and have joy in your posterity? And how can ye have joy in something that ye do not have? And Satan enticed Eve and showed unto her the pleasure of which he had spoken. And Satan took Eve and showed unto her the way that the other animals that were like unto him, whose body Satan had possessed, produced their offspring. And Eve gave into the enticings of Satan, and conceived within her. And immediately upon knowing that Eve had conceived with her womb, Satan departed from the creature whose body he had possessed. And immediately upon departing, the creature fell dead into the water, and was washed away by the great waters of the river that ran near unto the Garden of Eden. And Eve knew not that she had conceived a child within her. And immediately there appeared at her side Mary-Hala, who was the mother of her spirit. And Mary-Hala concealed with Eve, and explained unto her what Satan had done. And Eve was saddened greatly for that which she had done, and found little solace in the comforting words of her eternal mother. For Mary-Hala had counseled with Eve, and told her to go unto Adam without revealing unto him that which had transpired with Satan, and that she should say nothing unto him regarding the child that was conceived in her womb, but that she should speak to Adam and tell him of the commandment of the Father, and that she should show unto Adam the things that she had learned pertaining to the way in which the child was conceived. And Eve went unto Adam and touched him, and Adam felt the joy from the touch of Eve. And Adam said unto Eve, How didst thou know the way that we can experience this joy together? And Eve did not reveal unto Adam these things, but she kept them unto herself according to the counsel of her mother. And Eve explained to Adam that this was the only way that they could obey the commandments of the Father and multiply and have joy in their posterity. But Adam refused to listen to Eve because he did not understand that which he was to do. For the feelings that he felt from the touch of Eve were foreign to him. and he dared not touch her in a like manner, unless he received a commandment of the Father. And Eve wept before Adam, and Adam said unto her, Why dost thou weep? And what is the cause of thy emotion? Which emotion we do not experience here in the Garden of Eden. And Eve continued to weep before Adam, begging him that he would come unto her and complete the plan that the Father had for them. But Adam remained steadfast and firm in his desire to do only those things that he had been taught by the Father. And Eve said unto him, Dost thou believe that the Father shouldst command us in all things? Dost thou know the way in which our spirits were created by our father and our mother? Dost thou not take into account the things which were hidden from our view while we lived with the Father in his kingdom? Could it not be the will of the Father that we learn these things of ourselves? Behold, because I desire these things, I shall be forced to leave the security of the Garden of Eden and search the world that the Father hath created for us and commanded us to explore and care for. And because of thy stubbornness, thou shalt be alone in the Garden of Eden and unable to fulfill the commandments of the Father that he hath given unto us. And after much conversation with Adam, Eve was successful in explaining to him the plan of the Father and the only way that it could be carried out. And Adam gave to Eve that which she desired, and it was very pleasurable unto him, even so much that he thanked Eve for that which she had done. And from that time forth, Adam and Eve perceived each other differently than they had before. Their bodies began to crave the feelings that they had experienced as a man and woman, and they realized that they were naked. And the Father came down with Marihala to the Garden of Eden and visited with Adam and Eve. Behold, Marihala had gone back to the kingdom of the Father and brought him word of all the things that Satan had done in the world, that he had created for his spirit children. And the Father came down with Marihala to the Garden of Eden and visited with Adam and Eve. Behold, Marihala had gone back to the kingdom of the Father and brought him word of all the things that Satan had done in the world, that he had created for his spirit children. And the Father smiled upon Marihala, indicating that his plan would now go forth according to the laws of heaven, which laws have restricted him from interfering with the free agency of those whom he hath created, even all of his spirit children. For the Father could only give the commandments, but of none can he require to keep his commandments unless they willingly do so of their own accord. And Satan knew the plan of the Father, and thought that if he could do this thing unto Eve, and get her to obey the command of the Father, and begin the mortal lives for his spirit children, that the Father might see in him the glory that he desired. For behold, the plan of the Father could not progress without the choice of Adam and Eve to do what they did without the intervention of the Father. But Satan, for his own glory, desired these things, and thus broke the first principle and law of the government of heaven. And Lucifer presented himself before the Father, and told him the things that he had done. And the Father rejected the pleas of Lucifer because of the laws that he had broken to accomplish the things that he thought would bring him his glory. And Lucifer left the presence of the Father and went back into the earth. And when the Father had visited Adam and Eve, he found that they were timid and shy of their nakedness. And the Father inquired of them as to whether or not they had experienced the joy that cometh from becoming a parent. And Adam told the Father that Eve had enticed him to do this thing. And the Father rebuked Adam for his lack of understanding and blessed the actions of Eve, and that she had figured out the way that his plan could progress. And Adam was commanded to stay with Eve from that time forth, and that he should care for her, and also for the child that was conceived in her womb. And Adam knew not that the child was not his own, and the Father did not reveal this unto him at this time, because he wanted Adam to love the child as if it were his own. And the Father touched Adam and Eve, and therewith commanded the elements of their bodies to change in such a way that they began to die from that day forward. Nevertheless, the Father gave unto them laws and commandments that they should live by, so that they could live healthy and vibrant lives, thus having the ability to provide more bodies for his spirit children who were waiting for the days of their probation to begin. And the Father made some commands that I did not understand, but From that time forth, the borders of the Garden of Eden were no longer, and Adam and Eve were left to go into the world wherever the desires of their hearts would lead them. And the Father had given them instructions to eat of the fruit of the land, and that they might do so for their health and strength. And they were instructed to cultivate the earth and raise the fruit of the tree and of the vine to eat, and also the roots of the plants that required the movement of that part of them that appeared above the ground, to ensure the perpetuation of its species. And Adam went forth and planted vineyards and fruit trees, taking with him some of the seeds that the Father had provided for him from the Garden of Eden. For in the Garden of Eden, the plants continually grew according to the command of the Father. And in the seeds of these plants, God provided perpetual life for each species of plant. And these seeds would be the means of eternal life for each type of plant in its own environment. And some of these plants were specifically chosen by the Father to bring considerable joy to Adam and Eve as they ate them. And it was these plants that the Father instructed them to eat. And there were many other plants that God had placed on the earth to provide for other animals, but mostly to produce the atmosphere wherein life could exist. And Adam and Eve were forbidden to eat the flesh of another animal, for their bodies were not built for this type of nourishment. And Adam and Eve knew nothing about cooking their food, because they did not need to cook food in the Garden of Eden, nor was it part of the plan of God. For inside the food that they were commanded to eat, even the fruit that provided the seed of itself, and also those roots which needed to be pulled up in order to spread their seeds by the hand of an animal, even inside all of these were the necessary nourishment that Adam and Eve needed to keep themselves healthy and strong all the days of their probation. And in the communities of the other animals, even those whose bodies were being possessed by Satan and his followers, they did eat the flesh of other animals, and they did cook their food. And when they did cook the food, which they did eat, the heat from the fire destroyed those nutrients that God had established in the food to provide for the health and strength of the animal that would eat it. And amongst these creatures, death did enter therein swiftly and take their lives from the causes of the diseases and pestilence that were created from the food that they had eaten. For fire destroyeth all things that it toucheth, and it is a process of destruction that was not taught unto Adam and Eve from the beginning. And at the time of the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, or at the time the Father changed the makeup of the garden, and also the makeup of the bodies of Adam and Eve, the rest of the world was abiding in its course according to the time that God had set for it. And Satan commanded his followers to entice the creatures that were like unto Adam and Eve to travel the course across the waters to the land in which Adam and Eve could be found. And this he did that he might cause the bodies of Adam and Eve to become corrupted by the seed of the creatures whose bodies were of a lower order than the bodies created for Adam and Eve. And these creatures were wise, as it were according to the order in which they had been created. But they became wiser still because of the success that Satan had in possessing their bodies and influencing their minds. For after many years of inhabiting the bodies of this type of animal, Satan had caused them to become much like Adam and Eve, even so much that only the darkness of their skin distinguished them from the bodies created for Adam and Eve. And Satan taught them many things, and patterned many of the things that he taught them after the things that he had learned from the Father, even the manner in which the Father had planted the area known as the Garden of Eden. And these also lived nigh unto the great rivers that ran throughout the world. For it was in the most fertile parts of the earth that these had gathered to find the food that they needed. And I saw that the world was divided in its landmass, even that there were 7 separate areas of the world where the creations of God had wandered according to their individual abilities and their desires for food. And this great division was a new understanding unto me. Yea, I had thought the earth was one landmass surrounded by many waters. And of these great land masses, only 2 were inhabited by the majority of those of whose bodies Satan and his followers possessed. And of these great land masses, only 2 were inhabited by the majority of those whose bodies Satan and his followers possessed. And they congregated around 4 great river areas of the earth. And in the valleys of these rivers they did prosper and began to cultivate the land and make it their own. And Eve, as the righteous spirits, and even as the righteous spirits who resided in the spiritual part of the world did administer unto Adam and Eve and their posterity, even so did those spirits therein that chose not to follow the plan of the Father, did administer their ministrations unto these creatures. But this order of animal did not have the capacity to allow a spirit child of God to inhabit its body for a great length of time. For if they were possessed for a great length of time, they would be fatigued and would soon die because of their inabilities, which were caused by the order of their natures that had been given unto them by the Father. And Satan showed them the way whereby they could cross the many waters and travel to the great continent where Adam and Eve lived. And thus some of them began their journeys thereto.
Dance, baby, dance like the world is ending. Dance, baby, dance like the world is ending. Dance, baby, dance, cause the world is ending. Dance, baby, dance like the world is ending. Dance, baby, dance like the world is ending. Dance, baby, dance, cause the world is ending.
Get vaccinated. It's incredibly effective, but the truth is, not enough people are getting it. We've got to change that, so we can all have a safe and healthy holiday season.